it was noted that these complications, which are extremely rare but can be quite serious, did occur more predominantly in young women. In general, in India, these events occur in substantial numbers because of the clinical curiosity of such cases. The doctors will be reporting, even if the government is not picking them up. This particular complication has been reported earlier with the AstraZeneca vaccine, and that caused a fair amount of international stir, with the vaccine having been stopped for some time initially in some countries, then re-permitted, and again stopped in Denmark today completely. And some countries had actually said that people under 55 or under 60, different countries had different age limits, should not be given this vaccine. Even there in Europe, it was noted that these complications, which are extremely rare but can be quite serious, did occur more predominantly in young women. Some young men too were affected, but mostly in young people and mostly under 55 years of age, and again, mostly in women. These people had blood clotting in unusual locations in one of the venous sinuses of the brain, and also in the large veins draining the intestines and other abdominal organs. Venous thrombosis do occur in various places, but these are not the usual sites. The usual sites are in the deep veins of the leg. For example, when somebody takes a long flight, that's where it happens. But the second element is that in the blood, the platelet count was very low. The platelets are cells which are usually circulating in the blood and help to increase the clotting, not decrease the clotting. Now, instead of having more bleeding, if somebody has more clotting, that too on the venous side, it's a very unusual occurrence. And initially there was a question as to whether these are even linked to the vaccines. But after looking at the relationship, it became clear over a period of time in Europe that certainly these were linked to the AstraZeneca vaccination, even though rare. And now, with that information in the background, when the Johnson&Johnson vaccine also demonstrated the same feature, almost an identical feature, again, most in young women, it didn't take too long to put both of them together. These are all what we call virus vector vaccines. These are vaccines where the code for a DNA, the DNA code for the spike protein is carried by a so-called harmless virus, which is an adenovirus. In the case of the AstraZeneca, it is a chimpanzee virus. In the case of the Johnson&Johnson virus, it is a human virus. Now, where is the fault? Is it in the DNA that has suddenly come loose and is causing the problem, which sometimes is known to happen? Or is it in the adenovirus per se? What exactly is happening? Nobody really seems to know. But the fact that they are all virus vector vaccines involving an adenovirus puts all of them into the same category of suspicion. And that's why now the Sputnik V, the Russian vaccine, which is also using human adenoviruses, has come up with a big explanation saying that our technique is very different and we don't have this kind of free-floating DNA business. We are very, very safe and our methods of refinement are very, very different. So while the adenovirus may be the carrier, the rest of it is all very, very different. So in that sense, while the adenovirus story seems to be interesting, we still have to really examine what exactly are the problems with these vaccines. The Sputnik vaccine has been used internationally. They have not reported any events, but you could well ask, well, Are the Russians forthcoming with all the information? It is possible that you could raise that kind of a question, unfair as it may be, or fair as it may be, about what's happening in Russia. But the vaccine is also being distributed to a number of other countries, including some European countries.
Right.
Hungary and others have taken that vaccine. So if there was such a problem there, it would have surfaced by now. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep a watch out for it. We must keep a watch out for it. We do not know, because this is an autoimmune reaction. Are there certain factors that are operating in the European or Caucasian population which are not seen in India? And therefore, why is the autoimmune tendency much more among young women of that particular ethnicity? We do not know. We ought to really examine. Of course, we must ensure that any adverse events are fully identified and catalogued and analyzed. And therefore, I think they've also recently just put out another adverse event reporting form in which they're putting in more of these safeguards so that the cases do not go unreported. But in general, in India, if these events occur and occur in substantial numbers because of the clinical curiosity of such cases, the doctors will be reporting, even if the government is not picking them up. So far, we haven't had a hue and cry on any of these. Let me take a position on this. Well, in terms of trying to immunize as many people as possible, yes, we must try and proceed with the vaccination. And yes, this is a very rare event. But for the person who is affected and the family which is affected, it is a terrible event. Therefore, till you get to the bottom of it, there is no harm in pausing and investigating. In the West, they have access to other vaccines. They have Pfizer, Moderna. So I think it is prudent to give a little pause and examine what's going on, not scaring everybody, but saying that we are exercising due diligence. Yes, while it's very true that thrombosis on the venous side and on the arterial side in particular are much more frequent in women who smoke and women who take oral contraceptives. Particularly smokers who take oral contraceptives are particularly at a risk of high thrombosis and clotting events. But here we have seen that there are antibodies against the platelets. Smoking doesn't cause that. Oral contraceptives don't cause that. They make changes in the coagulation factors. They do that. But these antiplatelet antibodies are an autoimmune reaction. Therefore, to look for an explanation in only other conditions is probably incorrect here. Whether they contributed additionally, we cannot say. But obviously, this is an autoimmune reaction. Antibodies have been demonstrated, and therefore the pathology appears to be somewhat different.